right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Iwineti Africa. That's the new name we're calling the Truth Interviews, and Iwineti is the Amharic word for truth. And I have the Truth um, tribe with me here, amazing friends who have supported this journey right from the middle of last year um, when when it took a new turn compared to what we were doing before. So if wherever you're joining us from, I'd like you to just put it in the chat. During this conversation, it's going to be a relaxed conversation. We're just welcoming Anne Semanede George. Thank you for joining from Switzerland. Much
My
appreciated.
pleasure. My
All
pleasure.
right. All right. I have a slight echo. I think it's from me, but that's fine. All right. So we're going to get a lot of feedback from those who join in online. Today's discussion, I'm just going to read out the background. I'm just going to read out the background, and it's a bit of it can be considered a provocative background, but I think beyond that we must think of it rationally, and if there are places where we need to make adjustments as a people, we make those adjustments because um, there's no need to be angry. It's just about asking ourselves, is it true or not, and what do we change? So I'm just going to do a little bit of muting here or take out the echo. Yes. So as soon as we need to speak, we can unmute. I think I'm using two devices. This quote is from a man called P.W. Botha. His full name's I had it just a minute ago. Of blessed memory. So we speak of him with respect, and as we make the conversations, it's not an attack on any personality or group or race. It is an intellectual conversation driving change. It says, by now, every one of us has seen it practically that blacks cannot rule themselves, give them guns, and they will kill each other. They are good at nothing else but making noise, dancing, marrying many wives, and indulging in sex. Let us all accept that the black man is a symbol of poverty, mental inferiority, laziness, and emotional incompetence. Isn't it plausible, therefore, that the white man is created to rule the black man? And here is a creature, in quotes, in bracket, the black man, that lacks foresight. It is the core. The average black man does not plan his life beyond the year. That stance, for example, should be exploited. And exploited is a key word there. And before we continue, I'm going to welcome the crew on this conversation and ask for a few introductions. You know, it's sometimes when we tell people to talk about themselves is a little uncomfortable, but I trust that my crew here will be able to talk about themselves in depth. So let's start from Shadrach. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you do, how you do it, and where you're from.
Thank you kindly. First and foremost, much appreciated for your hospitality and facilitating this aptly timed conversation. Greetings and salutations to the audiences of Iwineti Africa from all over the world. I send greetings from Santen, South Africa, all the way across the latitudes and longitudes. You know, some of you may be familiar. I'm the co-founder of Coronet Blockchain, which makes me very privileged to be among the custodians of Africa's supply chains to reshape them towards the Africa we want. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Shadrach. Thank you very much, Shadrach. Much appreciated. Let's turn over to Reina Togel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rainer Tögel. I'm from the profession. I'm a farmer, a little bit different as a normal farmer. I have different companies, and I have also experience in agriculture and other business, also investing in Central Africa. This is everything I can say.
Thank you very much, Reina. Much appreciated. Anne is also here with us. There was a break in her
Sorry,
transmission.
sorry about that. Yeah.
Please introduce yourself quickly, briefly, please. Go ahead. I think you're using two devices, so that's why the echo is there.
Yes, I'll just make sure I'm off. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, the recent things, the things that listed, Faith, Shadrach, and you, Keno, to understand and accept the love I feel for so many of the African nation, though I haven't actually been there, allows me to be a part of this, if only to contribute from a moral perspective. I've spent half my life in East Asia and the other half of my life in Switzerland. So I'd like to contribute in fashion, maybe some points that belong from either of those perspectives. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anne. And we, in this conversation, we're definitely going to have a point at which we talk about other cultures and what they are doing in interesting and incredible things that they are doing or they have in their native culture, not their colonized culture or colonizer culture, but their native culture that actually shows that different cultures of the world have a way of thinking in the long term. So we're talking about long term, broad scope thinking, strategic thinking in the African context. We're going to just move over to the first question, and I'm going to ask Shadrach to take that. It's a little bit of a bias because it's from South Africa, and this question this question is about South Africa, and essentially the question is: are there observable realities in the lives of Black Africans that could have justified Botha's statements both in the 80s and today? Think of South Africa as a case study between apartheid and democracy. This is the truth interview. So please take it away, sir.
Thank you kindly. Thank you so much. Great once again to be here. I think while we were going through the courtesy introductions, Anne was still kind of like coming on board. So let me extend warm welcome to you, Anne, all the way from Switzerland. Great to have you here as well. We've already had our courtesy chat with Rainer all the way from Germany. It's really great to be here. And thanks again, Kenneth. With that being said, there's an African proverb that goes along the lines of until the day such that the lion insists or wrestles the hunter for the pen, then the history of the lion or the identity thereof will always be told from the hunter's perspective. So I think those comments, bless his soul, the late Mr. Botha, I think those comments do kind of like usher us into that lion hunter scenario as to who should be the custodian of the pen in order to define or rather to accurately reflect the identity of the other. And with that being said, it's a matter of perspective, really, because it could be ignorant of the hunter. Whoever the hunter is, it doesn't have to be Mr. Botha. It could be ignorant of the hunter that to think that they are befitting to really tell the destiny, trajectory, or the DNA and identity of the lion. And I think that is the first point that comes to mind. And secondly, the second point that I want to put forward is that in the Olympics and in shopping malls, there is a dynamic that makes these two scenarios similar. Firstly, if a mall property does not want to welcome buses into the mall, they will actually lower the bar to a certain height and they'll say no buses allowed. So we wouldn't blame the bus driver for actually not including that mall on his route to go into the mall, because the bus driver has to really, the height restriction, that's number one. Number two, you will have to enter the Olympics for you to actually win. What does that mean? Let me lower the drone and distill it. In America, there was an era, I've got it on my notes here, in 1863 to 1877, where for the first time, the American nation actually raised the bar, or rather lowered the bar to allow the black man, to allow the black woman to actually enter the championships of business. They were allowed to be in business. So one cannot say, well, black people are not good at thinking long term. They're not good at creating legacy if they were not allowed for 400 years of slavery across the Atlantic. That's one. Number two, in Africa, it was only between the mid 50s to early 60s that decolonization began, and now the hunter and the lion could actually both be allowed to do open trade at a large scale. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much. That's a brilliant one. That's a beautiful one. The story we're hearing is from the perspective of the hunter, or of the teller, of the storyteller, and that is a strong argument. Reina, you want to respond to that a bit?
Yeah, please. First of all, thank you very much to be invited in this conversation. For me, as a person that is English not the mother language, is not the mother language, and also be the symbol of a white old man, it's very difficult to discuss these points. But what is completely true, that when you put person in a corner, that it's made by the person with power, the result will be like you say. When you not allow people to go in business and not allow him to make his own company, you cannot say, okay, they are lazy or stupid, or not they are not able to do their own business. It's completely true. But on the end, we have different life experience in Europe or in Africa, also in the USA, and this life experience creates also a kind of how we act and how we react on situations. And this is maybe the out of the races, out of the. I'm not talking about races, or I'm not talk about something like genetic things. It's completely stupid and out of discussion. I only talking about the experience of the people and how they act, and how they act when problems comes. And this is a very important point. I want separate all this discussion from the racism discussion. It's very difficult, I know, especially as a white old man. But
Yeah.
for me, it's very important that it's not a question of race. It's not a question of DNA. It's a question of life experience, and it's a question of education, and it's a reaction of how the situation is on this place. For sure, also traditions, long traditions in religion traditions. But on the end, the result, what we see now, is that we have a different view of some things. And the good thing in this discussion is to see how is the other side, I'm not saying other side, but the other people see this special case. And for that, it's a very, very important discussion now, also between Europe or Western states to Africa. So, and this discussion will be not always nice, but he has been done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So I like that emphasis from Reina that this is not a race discussion, and it reminds me of Shadrach's point. P.W. Botha, bless his soul, and Shadrach happens to be a black South African. So this is not about this is not about trying to dig up old wounds. This is about looking inwards and asking ourselves, is there something we need to change about ourselves? What's responsible? And Shadrach made the reference to our history of slavery, which we're going to talk about in March, our history of colonization. Are these things the things that have um, impacted the way we think or the way we live as a people? Is it something that is influenced by these things. We're going to let's delve into that a bit. Let me come back to Shadrach, and I wanted to like unpack that a bit. How do you think our history as a people has been responsible for the way we deal with life in terms of long-term thinking, broad scope thinking?
Thank you kindly. You know, with that being said, in terms of our being the product of our environment to an extent, do we have a muscle memory or do we have an ability as Africans to think for the long term? It's a very interesting one because if you de-racialize it and you also look at the other side of the fence, you find that it's actually point number one, more a matter of it's not really a racial matter, it's an age matter. If you are to look at millennials and you are to look at Gen Zs, that group across the racial divide, they are the ones that actually tend to think more along the lines of instant gratification, and that has been proven across the world that, you know, the more youthful population are more thinking about they're called the microwave generation or the instant or the Instagram generation. So there is that deracialized component a bit. That's one. Number two, the facts sometimes they tend to be circumstantial, not racial as well. Let me explain. There is what do you call it? An index that is carried by the World Bank among other institutions that is referred to as the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. That, let me unpack it for the audiences. It means that if you are living below the poverty line, maybe you are living on less than $2 a day, you are most likely to be living in a part of the world or in a community where health care is also dilapidated, where issues of violence are also affecting you, where issues of perhaps literacy, they also come up. That's why it's called multidimensional poverty index. Why is that important? You know, I was looking at the numbers this week, and Europe on the global multidimensional poverty index, it actually is only home to 1% of the global population of those that are affected by the multidimensional poverty dynamics. Whereas sub-Saharan Africa, not even North Africa, sub-Saharan Africa is home to 53.4%. So once again, it's moving away from being deracialized and more a circumstantial issue. Let me close off with this one. The good news is, because we are not born in comfort as Africans, we are more, we have a bigger appetite for risk, and we have a bigger muscle memory for resilience, meaning with the right resources, the right mindset, and the right thinking, even if we have to create our own circumstances and create our own rainbow, we are really geared and well positioned to think long term and really create lasting legacies. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Shadrach. What I hear you say is that if we have the opportunity, we will think long term. We will change our patterns. But let me bring a bit of context. This is like a little bit of a curved ball, if you like. Now, I believe it was the 60s and 70s, certain countries got independence about the same time. Just this morning, somebody mentioned Haiti was independent like 100 years before Singapore. Singapore, Malaysia, Nigeria, Ghana, and so on were independent around the same time. So this brings us back to the conversation of colonialism and the background. Now, the question in my mind is, did we all have the same opportunity? Did Nigeria, Ghana, Malaysia, Haiti have the same opportunity? I mean,
that's a good question, and you know, it's bringing firstly the legalities of decolonization, and I'll be glad to report to the world over that perhaps a minimum of 80% of African countries are not decolonized. They are not decolonized. There's an appearance of decolonization. There has been ribbon cutting, there's been a fanfare, and there's been celebrations, but they're not decolonized. Let me qualify my statement. Number one, quite a number of the new, the independent states in Africa from the 60s, the likes of Ghana, and right through even up to South Africa. A lot of these states, they actually inherited a whole lot of debt that was actually incurred during colonial rule. That's number one. Number two, they've also been put in a corner in such a dynamic where they are not allowed to be fully independent. I'll give you an example. What does that mean? They are not allowed an opportunity to become independent apart from the appearance of being independent. There is foreign aid that is still flooding into Africa. And while that looks very kind, like our neighbors love us, attached to the conditions of that aid is actually a scenario whereby that aid comes with terms and conditions. I'll give you an example. A majority of the countries in Africa that are recipients of aid, they are systematically destroyed by the donors from offshore, where they are told that you are not really allowed to become food secure or produce your own food at liberty, because our food bill in Africa at the moment was sitting at 45 billion a few years ago. By 2025, the Africa Development Bank has projected that we will be indebted to our neighbors. We will need to import more than 100 billion US dollars. If you've got arable land in Africa, 60% of the global arable land is here in Africa. Rainer is a farmer, he will testify to that. But your hands are tied. You are not allowed to fund that land. There's a whole lot of seed cartels that are actually, that are playing a monopoly effect. Then you have to ask yourself, as business people, is there political will? Is there policy that favors thriving business without a control of the foreign donors that sometimes they are the puppeteers and we have to debt?
Wow, that is it. That is it. Reina has some thoughts on that, but I'll come to Reina. I want Anne to chime in a little bit. I've been wanting to say, do I want Anne to speak? But let Anne speak a little to douse, the conversation is getting to regions that are interesting. Okay, so Anne, please say something so that we'll all calm down. Say something. Please, you can unmute, please. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think my mic is. Do I unmute myself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can hear you now.
When I read that piece that you had put out, hello. Yeah.
Yes.
So this whole idea of race, I would actually see Malaysia.
Sorry, and I think you still have to put off there's a second device. Is there a second device? Maybe the mic on the second device is off. The mic is
Let's
on.
take this to this other side. That's interfering.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No
Is it
problem.
better now?
No problem. Yes, it's
Is
good.
it better now? Yes, it's good. Yeah. No, a statement like that from Mr. Botha, and what's most important to me in these discussions is exactly what Shadrach was saying. It's de-racialize the discussion. I love that, Shadrach, because in so many parts of the world you see that this whole race issue has been into so many different shapes. And if you're talking about Malaysia and colonialism, the government that we inherited was a government that was split along racial lines, Malay, Chinese, and Indians. And Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore worked out a deal with Malaya, as it was called at that time, and said, I want independence from Malaya. We will take as many Chinese who want to come into us. And that's how it began. And over the past, when I was there, almost all policies, study, building, funding, loans, were all racially done. So the Malays were seen as the ones who had suffered the most. They were the ruling party. And we had to live through the effect of sustaining race as a criteria. It's very damaging. I really want to discuss this discussion, maybe it hasn't so much to do with race as the way we live out our values, because there are bad apples in the barrel, right? So it's not can whole cart say Africans are like this, Africa this. South African, Ghanaian. I would really I hope with you three gentlemen that this discussion takes that path. Let's not use race as a flag that we're waving in the air, construct that and deracialize it. I'd really welcome. Yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you so much for that. Yes, you see, I had to let Anne speak. I have to speak. All right, that's beautiful. I think Rena had something to say, but let me just recap a little bit on what am I clear now? The echo? No echo? Let me just recap a little on what Shadrach was saying. Shadrach is saying that we did not necessarily get the opportunities that we thought we got in this part of the world. I don't know whether that is the result of who colonized us or the result of the way we negotiated in quote decolonization. So could it be a result of how we negotiated? I remember the negotiations of the francophone countries that said, oh look, we will buy from you as long as you let us be free. Now, let me allow Reina to share his thoughts on that aspect a little before we move to the next question. Reina?
Shadrach, on one side, you are completely right, but what is the result? But the reason for that, you're completely wrong. Means I will tell you a story about my family, and I've told you this story a long time before. I'm a farmer, and my family is farming doing 400 years. And the base of this farming is the land ownership. And we in Germany, we say as a farmer, we are not the owner of my farm. I'm only the administrator for this farm and this land for my children and grandchildren. Means this is a very important point in agriculture business in Europe. Means, and also in Northern America. Means we are in the time of 24 years or 25 years or 40 years. It's how long I can work as a farmer. The land is given to me only as a gift for the next generation. This is a very important difference. And I will say the land ownership is the base of all the success of the agriculture in Europe. And 95% of the farmers in Europe are private, small private companies with their own land. So, and this is a very important point of long-term strategy. So, what was happened as Africa became colonized? The people in Europe, they have not its own land, especially in UK or in countries with a very strong landlord system. They want also become rich and have his own land, and he cannot have his own land in his own country. They go outside, means they risk their life by a boat to go to Africa. Also, Germans are mainly uh, from Britain and other countries. They have a special system. Is not allowed for normal people or poor people to have his own land, and they go there and they do special things. They go there and say to the local persons, we take the land from you. It's not important to have this land. Yes, this is a very important point. And when the locals not accept this, they kill them. It was, I can say, the mindset in the set is that it was so strong that they won't have his own land for the next generation to produce food and everything, to become rich and everything. He's allowed them to say, okay, they give us not the land, we kill them. So, and two major things, what I see in agriculture in Africa is the property of land, or the property as a structure of governance, is not really strong. And the second thing is, it is also a result of the colonism, is the government has to told you what you can do. It's a completely different mindset. In Germany, everything is allowed, what is not clearly forbidden. What I discussed with some Africans, especially in when they also have its own business, they always say, "Oh, we cannot do this. We have to wait for the the, the permission from the state." Yeah, I can say when Mr. Musk and all the other guys always wait for the permission to do Microsoft or to do Tesla or all these things and waiting for the government, also the government in Germany or in the United States, we will drive with horse carriage. Yeah, this is the result of thinking. Yeah, when you always wait, but this is also the structure of power it was in the past. The white man came to Africa and said, everything is forbidden. Out of this is a very easy, simple system. You forbid everything, and only when it's good for the white man, you allow the local population to do this. And this is also now in the mind. When I see how wrong and how bad some governance is in Africa, I say, why you accept this? Why you ask for a permission? Nobody will care. It's only to give permissions is always to take money for the local governance. You can do nothing. You cannot build a borrow to give the water to the local people without the permission. I have seen this in many countries. And the other side is, and this is a very important point, land ownership is power. Where it was in the Middle Age, all these lords and everything was always based on the population, the numbers of the population, and the land ownership. But it's around the world. Only in Africa, it's completely different. When I ask some farmers and they say, I want to build a farm there, yeah, we can have 200 hectares, 5,000 hectares, not a problem. And I ask, what is about the land ownership? I want it would not have it as a gift. I will pay for that. No, you cannot. You have a concession, and maybe the state will take the land back. And I say, when I want to build a farm in Africa, it takes minimum 25 years, minimum one generation, to start the business and to be stable enough to go on with this business. But I will never invest in a land. This is not my land. And this is also a question for the African farmers. When I see my colleagues in Africa and they want to buy a tractor, in Germany, not a problem. When I be a farmer, I have 100 hectares. It's the asset is 10 million euros, the land ownership. I can go to the bank. I need a tractor. I say I be a farmer. I have 100 hectares. The value of the land is on the market is 5 to 10 million euros. It's easy to buy a tractor. When my colleagues go to the bank and say, I have 20 hectares and want to buy a tractor, and then it's the bank officer say, what is your guarantee? Yeah, I have 20 hectares for my father, and the chief told me, blah, blah, blah. But on the end, by the rules of the bank systems, sorry, it can say it's nothing. And you cannot get a loan of the guarantee that you give the guarantee of the land. So this is one point. The second point is everybody knows that with 1 or 2 hectares as a farmer in Africa, you can go never in competition with farmers in Europe or in Northern America or Brazil. You are too small. You're so small that you never will reach so much money that you can reach the next level of education and the next level of technology. Means 2 hectares is nothing. I can say it's a trap. Yeah. Normally, you have to have 25, 50 hectares with all the technologies, everything, what you need. And then you have to earn enough money to send your kids to the university to reach the next level of education also in Africa. But it's too small. And
It's
when
like
I
a
see
a vicious cycle,
yeah, it's a very bad cycle. But when I see all these helping these programs from the banks or from food aid and all these things, it always focused on 1 hectare and 2 hectare farmers. Okay, they are the poorest. For sure, it's very important to help them, but not to help them to stay in this trap of agriculture, small agriculture farming. So, and to help them to say, okay, go out of agriculture, give the land to your neighbor, and also the other neighbor give the land to the best farmer in the town, in the village, and he will create his own farming business. And you have to find, and we will help you to, I don't know, to do other things, taxi, transport, mechanics, something like. But now the situation is, it's very good for Europe and it's very good for Northern America. Africa is a victim in this, and nobody wants to have that the same structure is as in Europe comes to Africa and goes in competition with all the producers in Brazil, in United States, in France, and Europe. It's David against Goliath. But not in a religious way, not in a nice way. It's not in a
Yes.
nice way. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator against a 5-year-old school kid. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
result is like it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my
So Ray,
statement
let
about
me pause you there a bit. Let me pause you there a bit. I like, but if I understand your thoughts very clearly, you are somewhat agreeing with Shadrach as well that these circumstances have been the result of inheritance from ways of governance that we inherited from from Europe, basically, and those who colonized the African countries, who were able to give restrictions on how we should behave. Now we have carried those restrictions, that form of restriction, even to our current governance, and the government of the land, who are our own people, are also giving us restrictions now. And these restrictions are spilling over into how land is managed, and it puts generally us in a disadvantage because we are not able to scale to the next level from one generation to another, if I got that right. And that is very, very interesting. I would like to, it is something that, and I think you've made it a great suggestion that could be strategic suggestion that will pay off over a long term. If someone donates 2 acres to me, 2 acres to my brother, 2 acres to my cousin, we should come together and say, let's have a single farm that is 10 acres or 20 acres, build it up over the generations, everybody do something else, build it up to the point where it's a mega farm. That is how we can give an opportunity to the next generation. And that is long-term thinking. Thank you for that, Reina. Thank you so much for that. Now, because of our time, we have pointed out, at least we have captured the fact that we have a history that may be impacting us, even though there is the argument that some countries seem to have similar history and were able to make it out of it. But maybe we'll make that conversation for another day. So we're going to push it, go towards the individuals, the families, and ask ourselves, these are what we have discussed are macro issues. Now, in the micro issues, in terms of simple things like long-term investments, like insurance, like wills, how does this whole structure of short-term thinking impact how we treat money, how we treat each other, schooling? I mean, the value we place on this thing. Let me come back to Shadrach on that question.
Thank you kindly, Kenneth. I think there are two sides to the coin in terms of responding to whether we are aligned or we are ready to really delve into family related or household income and expenditure when it comes to creating legacies for our families on a micro level. I think that the macro last point that we must just touch on, can Africans think long term? Can they think long term as a collective? And then are they or are we thinking long term on a household level? I think the what do you call it? I will start with the first dynamic. Can we think long term? Well, along the Nile River, across Sudan, and towards Egypt, and those kind of regions, there are 200 pyramids that are standing today that are a legacy of what do you call it? A collective of people that are known as the Black Pharaohs that actually ruled those empires along those lines. It's actually even less popular than the Egyptian pyramids, but nonetheless, they're standing tall and they're standing as a collective. So those are some of the dynamics or some of the testament evidence-based findings that we actually are able to think into 1,000 years, into hundreds of years. And even though the colonial past bent our libraries down and tampered with some of our historical evidences, I'm glad that they left the pyramids alone, number one. Number two, just 3 days ago, Mr. Elon Musk, my former neighbor, he actually carried about 3 satellites into space on behalf of South African government. We as a people, we created those satellites here on African soil. So just on a macro level, there is evidence that we are thinking long-term as Africans, given that some of the satellites are going to stay up there for more than 200 years for generations to come for connectivity. But on a household level, are we thinking long-term? Obviously, there are dynamics whereby financial exclusion in the past, which is something that the Sustainable Development Goals is trying to address, Agenda 2063 is trying to address, Rainer touched on it with regards to education, to prepare the next generation to not face the same reality as the current. I totally resonate with him there. Let me give one aspect in terms of financial services and insurance. Currently, the majority of African countries do not have an adoption that is really pleasant when it comes to insurance. I mean, I think about 80% of African countries, when it comes to life cover, are sitting on anywhere between 0.2% to just less than 5%. That's 80% of African countries. When you come to South Africa, which is the tallest adopter when it comes to insurance and financial services, in terms of thinking long-term and also affording to actually pay for long-term, meaning thinking is one thing, but can you afford it? South Africa is actually home to 16% of the continent's insurance services or engagement. So you can see already. But let me conclude it with this point. There are income inequalities when you move away from insurance. There are income inequalities in Africa that we want to do away with because we want a more inclusive Africa. Currently, across the continent, 10% of the income in any country is actually going to 10% of a population, 10%, they are taking home 50% of the income. That's a vast income inequality that we need to close that gap. In South Africa, the most unequal country in the world, although we are changing that, 10% of the population is sharing more than 65% to 70% of the income that is there to be made. So when you are just trying to stay alive, insurance is not going to come top of mind on your mind. So it doesn't mean that you are incapable of thinking long-term. It's that you can't afford to think long-term. You just have to keep your head above water. Thank you kindly.
That is awesome. That is another dimension to it, and I think Shadrach is speaking to the fact that one of the questions of this conversation: do our circumstances limit our ability to think long term or to operate long term? Thank you, Nana Sewas, for joining in. Appreciate that. I'm sure we'll hear some powerful thoughts from you as well. So there are some circumstances. We have talked about the fact there's a history that is impacting us. But Shadrach is also saying our present day realities we have to deal with. And I think that we also have to strategically come out of them, because it's like chicken and egg. I mean, do we keep going in this cycle, or are there things we can do to break out? Maybe not in this generation, maybe in the next generation. Reina?
Um, I think it's not so easy, as you say. So for sure, when you have not to, when you starve hunger and you have not enough money to survive, and you fight every day to survive, it's very very difficult to create long term targets and reach them. When you say, okay, tomorrow maybe I have find food for my kids. This is this is what I say before with the 2 hectare or 1 hectare
Mm-hmm.
farmers. Then when you every day you have to think about the next day, you cannot create um, long-term strategy. It's not possible. When
Mm,
when the stomach is full and everything is nice, yet you can think about what is the next step. And this is the trap is most of the African population is in. So, but we have for sure a different thinking about long-term strategy as a also as a cultural issue. Means not about it's coming from the history and all these things. So I will tell you an example, and it makes me really really anger. In Germany, 45% of the young people go to university. So, and what is when you go out from school to university? The main thing is the students have to organize himself. Not every morning the mother is coming, wake you up, give you breakfast, and send you to school, and the teacher say to you what you have to do, and then when you go home, you have to do your homework. Blah blah. Everything is covered by a structure. But when you go out of school, you go to the university, and you want to be a master of arts in, I don't know, agriculture, in mechanics, engineer, something like that. And the next steps to come to a master and maybe to doctor and everything. And this is a long-term target,
mm,
and you have to do it by your own means. It's nobody tell you to go to wake up and stand up and go to the university to the teacher. Nobody will push you. So means this is um, completely different thinking. So the when when you reach to become a master on the it's two results. First of all, you have the knowledge to do that what you are. Means you are engineer, you are master in engineering, you are engineer. You have learned everything. But the second thing is you have go to school, to university, nobody pushed you over 5 to 6 years. And it's very important, the government say to you, it's good that you be to go to the universe to do your own ideas, and it's always not like the teacher is saying what is fact. So in university it's different. The young students say, maybe what you say is wrong, we have a new strategy, we have a new product, blah blah blah. It's a ping pong playing when it's a good university. So when I see what is was happening in Uganda in the last 2 years, the schools are closed for more than 80 months, or 80 weeks, sorry, 83
mm,
weeks. And from one side, okay, it's a very difficult situation, but what is the signal, what the government is sending to the population is education is not the important point for you. We are not give the full power that our school kids reach the next level of education and to come better, and maybe they can go to university. The worst signal what can send the government to the population is teaching, schooling, and all these things are not important.
mm,
So, and this is the result what Uganda has done to the population. And now the situation, the school are reopened again, but the child's not coming back. They say, we have done now our own business, we have to help our father, we got married and everything. The result is completely worse. And this is also a thinking of different of thinking. So I know the situation about COVID is very difficult also in Africa, in Europe, around the world, and we have a lot of we have much more money to handle this. We are stronger, but on the end, the signal to the population is school, education, don't care. It's not important for us. So
Okay,
and this
I can
is a
say
very
that.
important. This is
Go
a
ahead.
very, very worse situation. And this
Okay.
shows to the rest of the world they will stay, as always, bad educated population.
Yeah. Now, I think the conversation, you're pointing out the role of leadership in painting the picture of the future to the population, if
Yeah.
I got that right. There is the role of leadership in being able to say, this is where we are going, this is how we're going to get there, these are the critical success factors, and you've given the example of education. What importance does a country, a nation, its leaders give to something like education? The leadership must define the future and pull the people towards that future, no matter how far it is. And this brings me to an interesting stuff that I came across today. It was very interesting that we were talking about long-term thinking in this conversation today. Just today, I came across a document being developed by a state in Nigeria. I've never seen anything like that before. It is a 30-year development plan that is um, 485 pages long, 2020 to 2050. I've never seen it before, and it's quite interesting that it is coming at this time. That this is the table of contents that we're talking about a topic like this. So what Reina is saying here is the leadership must define the future in order for the population to follow. I'm going to come back to Anne to tell us the story. Anne will tell us the story because I want that story to be on record and from India, from South India. Before we do that, I'll just play a short video from someone who is an insurance person in the context of this conversation as well. All right.
Hello, Africa. Hello, Renati. And I'm very much grateful to be here. You guys are doing great.
I hope the sound
I'm
is
so
on.
excited to be part of whatever you are doing and changing Africa. And for the topic you have, you're looking at the long-term, broad scope, strategic thinking in the African context. I believe it's about time that Africa needs to have a paradigm shift. We need to change the status quo. And one way of doing this is what the Wignati is trying to carry across the continent. Now, I just want to share something with you. My name is William Akufu. I happen to be the CEO of UBN. And UBN, they are doing something amazing and great in Ghana and educating people to know about one simple subject, which is life insurance. Now, a lot of people, and I know you could also have been saying this all the time, that you do not believe in life insurance because of one or two experiences that you have had. But let me tell you one thing. Life insurance is not a religion for you to say you believe in it or not. It is not a religion. It is just a risk management mechanism that everyone needs to have. So it's just your foundation to your life. And just like a building, every building or your financial plan needs to have a foundation. And the foundation or the bedrock to this financial plan is you having a very good and a secure life insurance policy.
All right. I'm going to keep the suspense on. We'll put that on our YouTube channel, Iwinati Africa. So if you've not subscribed, please subscribe to Iwinati Africa. This recording will be there as well, and this videos will be there. Let's go over to Anne and hear a story from South India. Please go ahead, Anne. Okay.
Say that the Indian, South Indian culture, and even as it was lived in, was a family thing. I think we are part of the family. Things that we achieve becomes part of the family, and the fact that losses that we have. I know it can go wrong, but it's embedded within a family. So it's really less of a me and my and I culture, but a we and us. And so, for instance, just as a small anecdote, my mom asked me, where is your father gone? I said, oh, he's taken his car and there. And then she looked at me and said, what is his car? I said, it's Papa's car. And she goes, no, it isn't. Our car. And I was 88 years old. And when you hear a lesson like that, it's in your mind, and and coming to Europe and watching influence me, my and I culture. And so what I had come up with, Rainer, I don't know if you heard that, is when we were thinking about this talk, I said, I'll tell them about long-term planning, but with a tree. And in Malaysia, where I lived, my mom actually planted a cashew nut tree for me. And it grew as I grew. When it was 10, it was 12 years old. You are watching that tree and provide fruit, not just for yourself, but for our community. So when we went to India, many trips, my father actually pointed out the sandalwood tree that planted for me. My grandfather had decided he would do that. And again, the point is that the sandalwood tree would grow. And, in my community, we didn't have marriages with young girls. So it was definitely when cleaners into their 20s, that tree would then become part of the daughter's inheritance as she left her home. I don't know, like Rainer was saying, I think there are certain cultural perspectives. If you look in many cultures, they exist. Maybe we don't recognize it, but as he said, you're not just having that farm for yourself, you have it for a generation and coming after you. And I would say in these discussions that we're having, I think just opening our eyes to that thought, and I know how wrong it can go, where you have relatives who expect you to pay for everything because of money. That happens too. But my grandfather was a farmer, on my maternal side, and he had a really big farm compared to many. But he was an owner of a farm, and his responsibility was to take care of the poor. That was written into their Christian culture and things. So my mother would say, we had to fight with the children because the mango tree had a fruit. If it fell to the ground, the poor could take it. Not just ours. And what does that do for your mind? When you have the poor and providing for the poor as part of your cultural DNA, so I would say, in these discussions, I think, if you're taught having a forward-looking thing, it might be interesting to look at cultural values that make our hearts bigger, make our minds bigger, where we are looking at children and grandchildren, at least. Yeah, I would say. Thank you.
That's beautiful, so beautiful. And I think that speaks to that broad scope thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
how do we think about the whole community? I remember a story. I think it was South Africa too, when people got to a crossroads, and the traffic light wasn't working, and they managed to organize themselves to say, 2 cars from this entry point, 2 cars from this, without a policeman, without all that hula baloo, without traffic lights. And that just, tells you that people I'm not just thinking about myself, I'm thinking about what happens to other people who are using the same facilities. This also goes to the leadership that says, okay, do I want to pay myself more than every other senator in the world, or am I thinking of how the money I have is useful to the people I'm leading, and so on and so forth. So thank you for that contribution, and that was so strong. I appreciate that so much. We are just about out of time, and I think we have touched on some of the key issues, and I just want us to take some last thoughts, and I want us to take it this way. I don't know, the collective. We have talked about the macro, the micro a bit, and maybe we just merge it with last thoughts in 30 seconds to 1 minute, and try to, play out on some of the key takeaways from this conversation today. Let me come back to Shadrach and to do that before we go away. Shadrach?
Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly. Some of the audiences might be aware that the hat that I wear within Coronet blockchain is also into African supply chains, is also one of strategy. Meaning it's not a hat that I'm wearing in blockchain only. I inherited this from my previous roles, including my last role at Deloitte, where growth and long-term thinking and accessing new ground or new territories in order to expand has been in my muscle memory for 1.5 decades to date. So I'll be speaking from that. So maybe moving from macro to micro, let me give my insights, perhaps my tips to maybe an entrepreneur who's thinking in Africa, how can they think long-term in a way that it thrives their business and benefits their family? I'll divide it into 3. Think of business as the horse, the rider, and the racetrack. If you were to put those 3 compartments, it will help you, because on the rider scenario, on that component, you must know that you are the rider, your team as a collective, whether you've got 1 or 2, or perhaps you are blessed to have 100 around you, all that as a collective is a rider. What type of leadership dynamic are you having? Is there more bureaucracy in there, or do you have clarity of vision as a leader, as a founder, and also as a team? That's very critical when we look at the rider, because a lot of companies, they crash and burn because they have at some point lost their leadership, lost their identity, and lost their rhythm. Things just got diluted by market forces. Very critical to always come back. Who is the rider? Are we in the driving seat, or are we looking at what competition is doing? No. Reel it back. You determine your culture, you determine your focus and your vision, and you determine what your strategic approach is, and you stick to it. You can learn from others, but stick to what's in your DNA. That's the rider component. The second one is the horse. The horse is the company. With that, you must always endeavor to build and sustain a bureaucracy-free entity. You need to always make sure that decisions are made quickly and decisions are made transparently, and you must also run an agile entity. You must run an entity, as Rainer said, that does not wait for the government, that does not wait for policy, but it actually creates its own rain. It makes its own sunshine. That is ideal. Inside your 4 walls, control what you can control. Don't worry so much about is there going to be a moratorium on crypto in Nigeria? Is there going to be a back to school? If those things work, great. But if they don't work, you still have a mouth to feed. You still have to run a thriving entity that actually runs a healthy payroll, and it runs a healthy balance sheet that is profitable. So that is the horse. Keep the horse healthy. Keep the horse on track. And what about the racetrack? Blockbuster. which was knocked out of the ballpark by the likes of Netflix. At some point in its heyday, Blockbuster was a market dominant force with more than 65 million registered customers. But at some point, maybe they got a bit comfortable. Maybe they forgot to look at the racetrack. You know, there's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? They forgot to see that somebody is moving the cheese, meaning that the audience expectations are changing. Are we innovating? Are we innovating ahead of the curve? They didn't. And needless to say that they went the route of Kodak. They went the route of Nokia. They went the route of other companies that are in the grave right now. And you can perform a post-mortem on them to know that if you don't think long-term, then the grave is for you. God forbid. So may God help you. So that is my impartation to those that are in business and they're thinking, how do I think long-term? How do I move from 2022 to 2030? It's interesting that you showed us that document, Kenneth, because the ruling president of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, he actually brought my insights on board back in 2011, and he commemorated and awarded me in public to thank me for my inputs for South Africa's Vision 2030, which is still an what do you call it, an interactive document in line with Agenda 2063. Thank you kindly.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you, Shadrach. I mean, this is strategy speaking, and this is amazing strategy speaking. And I like what you said about the fact that the leader, the rider, must take control of what he can take control of, and he must keep thinking about that long term, not always reacting or being put down by immediate issues or circumstances. Yes, the analogy king. That's from James. James says Shadrach, the analogy king. Thank you for that one. All right. So we're taking final words, and I'll turn over to Reina. Reina, please. Last words for this conversation, please. All right.
I can say I think Germany, also the neighborhood countries like the Dutch, they are masters of long-term thinking. And long-term thinking is a tool, is not good or bad. I won't say this. And when you focus only on one long-term thinking, is that you can lose your flexibility. And this is the best thing on Africa. Africa is flexible, means the people can react very fast on the new situation. This is gonna a little bit lost in Europe. It means, and now maybe the next 100 years is the time of flexibility. It's the things changing so fast that maybe the old population in Europe, in Germany, is not fast enough and not flexible enough to create the next thing. And long-term thinking and strategy can be also be worst. Means, as a German, you know, the Nazis say we want to have a 1,000-year Reich, and this was the, I can say, the perverse idea of long-term thinking. And without long-term thinking and strategy, it was not possible to kill so much people. Means long-term thinking is a tool, and not more and not less. And you can use it in a good way, and you can also use it in a bad way. Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Reina. That's beautiful. Number one, as Africa, the position where we are is an advantage. We still can do something for the next 100 years. And long-term thinking has its pros and cons, and we must be aware of that. And last words. Thank you, James. Okay, please go ahead. And are you there? Okay, sorry. I can hear you now. Yeah. Hello, Anne, can you hear me? I think Anne can hear me for some reason. Okay. All right. I don't know why. And can you hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me. Maybe the sound went off with that. That's fine. All right. Yes. All right. So I'm just going to give, before we close out and go ahead, I'd like to also ask Shadrach to once again. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I think Anne is speaking.
You have to unmute.
Anne? Yeah, please start again. Yeah. Sorry.
I can. The mic is muted. The mic is.
No. I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you. Just
my mic is unmuted now, Kenneth. Kenneth?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in one point. Long-term thinking. Yeah, long-term thinking, in my eyes, has to start with the education of the children. If we want to change attitudes that hit us in a basket by teaching our children to think differently and to act differently, we have a much chance of achieving the things that are needed for the nation. So I'd like to say that education is one of those very critical tools to change a generation, and it can be done. You can take people, young people, and they're doing it in India. There are immense programs to teach the poorest that they can rise to the top, that they can expect good things to come to them. So I wish that for Africa, really.
Thank you so much. Nana Sewa is also agreeing with you, saying that this is exactly it. We have to unlearn, relearn. I was listening to a conversation with the president of Aseshi University today. It's a university in Ghana, and he said that you can change the culture of university in 4 years, because every 4 years the whole set of students changes. And I think you can expand that analogy to a nation. Every 100 years the whole nation changes. So if you can train the children, like Anne said, starting now, you can change the future of the nation. Thank you for that. And Shadrach, please take it away.
Thank you kindly. I just wanted to, on a parting note, extend our gratitude to James, who's been leaning forward on this journey. We really appreciate that. It's an atmosphere of co-creation, and I also like to wish Nana Sewa well, even as she recovers, to be well. I also want to take my hat off that I'm in the presence of greatness, because the teaching profession, I would like to call it the teaching calling. The teaching calling is something that has really, Anne has embodied it across, across quite a large window. We are looking at close to 2 decades that she has been a devoted teacher, wearing multiple hats in that regard. One cannot respond to the teaching calling without really having long-term thinking in their mind and heart, and the patience with which she has imparted language and taught other disciplines. I really take my hat off for her. And farming, not just as a profession, but a family calling. I can see the 400 years of, I don't want to call it programming, I rather call it muscle memory, has really impacted Rainer and geared him for the right type of long-term thinking, not the perverse kind, as he pointed out to. So power to you, sir, and power to you, Anne. And once again, thanks to James, who has leaned forward, and thanks to Nana Sewa. On a parting note, I know most of the audiences of Iwineti right now are brushing up and finalizing their New Year's plans or their New Year's short or long term. I just wanted to give something there to say, the CEO of Nokia, who in Finland moved from the rubber manufacturing into making phones that don't break, and he thought that's where he has to leave it. They just have to keep making phones that don't break, not smartphones, not fancy phones or touchscreen. No, make phones that don't break, and you are done. You're going to be the market dominant for generations. In tears, there's a video of him on YouTube. In tears, he said, We did nothing wrong, but we still failed. What that means is when we think long term, 2022 to 2030 and beyond, about our lives and our families, let's be flexible. Let's change when the circumstances, maybe the clouds are gathering. Let's be wise. Let's be adaptive. But let's remain true to ourselves so that we're not like that leader who says, we didn't see it coming. We did nothing wrong. So even as the country changes, like Kenneth said, when the country adapts, let's adapt and take advantage of a post-pandemic future and to future-proof ourselves and our families. And on that parting note, if you are to change only 1% with the art of continuous improvement, called Kaizen in Japanese. If you have to change continuously, just 1% a day, by the end of 2022, you will be 365% more efficient than when you started the year. Good people, thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Shadrach. That is strategy speaking. Thank you, Reina. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Nana, as well. And thank you, James, for an awesome, consistent support for us. Happy New Year once again. One of these days, I'm going to convince James to come on the platform. Thank you, James. So we're going to close it out for now. And this video will be on YouTube, in Winati Africa, the YouTube channel. And we're going to do more. Next month, we already have the discussion for next month. We're going to talk about the macro thoughts for small businesses. How do global events, how do finance, fiscal policy, and so forth, how do they affect small business? We already have that. We have 3 speakers who have agreed to join us, and we're waiting for one confirmation, and then we publish it. So this year we're thinking long term. We're publishing everything ahead of time, and we're going ballistic. So thank you for your support, and thank you everyone out there who's seen this video now, who will see it later. We're still here, and we're still moving, and we're still doing great things. One more announcement. One more amazing announcement. In fact, the drums have to roll for this one. We're going country by country in Africa. We're going to have Winati Ghana, Winati Nigeria, Winati Ethiopia, and so forth. And we're going to have discussions that are focused on those countries that are dearer to the heart of those countries, and more frequent outings on these platforms. We're getting volunteers who will make this happen in the nearest possible time. So thank you, everyone. We are here, and we're here for good, right? Okay. So let's please give us a round of applause for that. It's going to be bigger and better. And that's on that note, I'll have to close it out. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.